It's Tuesday. It's 2 p.m. Pacific. It's time for the lobby, GameSpot's weekly hangout where we talk about video games. In this case, Final Fantasy, Marvel vs. Capcom 4 rumors. We got a whole lot of things to talk about today. Pete Brown, what's up?
Hi.
You're always on the show. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I've been super busy playing Final Fantasy 15.
And Watch Dogs 2, and as of today, another game.
Last Guardian, yeah.
Yeah.
Busy boy.
A couple games we probably never thought we'd see, and now back to back.
Yeah, one after another.
Yeah.
You've
had a tiring Thanksgiving week.
Yeah, but it was good. We can get into it a bunch more, but I was happy to play Final Fantasy 15 as much as I had the chance to.
Sweet. I'm looking forward to that. Eric Tay, what's up?
What up?
So we're either talking about Destiny, a fighting game, or Overwatch. If Eric's on, Eric, which one are we talking about?
I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah.
Probably fighting game.
Yeah. So just to jump right in, recent report emerged. I think Polygon was the first to report on it, saying that Marvel vs. Capcom 4 will be shown at PSX, which is this weekend. And which is weird because I think it was late 2014. Marvel vs. Capcom Origins got pulled from PS3, Xbox 360 Marketplace. They weren't Capcom wasn't completely open with whether they would continue with the series. Obviously, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 being the last major entry, but now it appears, according to a substantial report, that we will be seeing Marvel vs. Capcom 4 at PSX this weekend for all intents and purposes. So we kind of wanted to talk about what we might see in that game, what we want, what characters would do well, and what characters we won't see because it's only Marvel Cinematic Universe characters, which excludes the X-Men, which is kind of a huge blow to the game. Did you play Marvel vs. Capcom 3 a lot, Tay?
Yeah, I played a bunch of Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which is, I guess, slightly newer than that version. They're going to lose a lot of, I guess we'll start with that, I guess. They're going to lose a bunch of core kind of characters that have been in the Marvel vs. Capcom kind of series. You're going to lose Magneto, Storm, Wolverine, Sentinel. These are some pretty big mainstays that have been kind of throughout. Some of them haven't been in all of them, but those, some of the ones I named have been in, I think, all three. So it'd be interesting to see. It's not just X-Men, too. It's Deadpool and then Super Skrull, I think, because that's Fantastic Four. So just whatever Marvel doesn't have are part of the MCU.
Yeah, I saw people on Twitter saying that's the equivalent of if Link and Pikachu weren't in Smash or something. That's the kind of how big of a blow it is to this roster. But did you play Marvel vs. Capcom 3 a lot, Pete?
I didn't play 3 so much, but I've been sort of, I used to play all the old 2D games, starting, back when it was even just an X-Men fighting game, right? And then it was Street Fighter versus X-Men, and then it was Marvel Superheroes, and it was Marvel versus Street Fighter, and then Marvel versus Capcom. I played all of those, and X-Men were a huge part of this series, from the beginning. So it will be really strange to not be able to pull up Cyclops and Wolverine, right? Two pretty big omissions in my mind. 3, I kind of fell out of for some reason, and I don't know how I feel about 4 at this point. I don't really care about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm not in love with those movies, and I feel I don't know. What do I want to see from Capcom characters? I don't even know anymore. After 5, I feel kind of apprehensive to get really excited about another fighting game from Capcom.
Think about Capcom right now. The closest game that comes to mind right now is Resident Evil 7, but that doesn't even have classic characters. Chris Redfield, he was in 3, right?
Yeah.
I don't play many fighting games. I remember I played it for a little bit and I enjoyed it just because I like a lot of Capcom games, and I used to be into Marvel much more than I am now. Like you, Pete, I kind of fell out of keeping up with it, which is why I'm not crazy excited about this either. I think according to the report, Ant-Man and Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy are very likely characters. Ant-Man I have not seen, but I saw Guardians of the Galaxy, and I know Groot is a fan favorite, so I'm sure there will be a lot of jokes surrounding him. But I kind of wanted to touch on what kind of move sets they would have. Eric, as your fighting expertise goes, what they might be doing. Also, considering, they have Wolverine, Cyclops, Magneto are going to be omitted. What kind of fighters do they need now that those several X-Men are gone from the franchise and whatnot? I don't know. What's your take on what kind of roles these new MCU characters will fill if they are confirmed this weekend?
That's tough. I don't know how you do Ant-Man, though, because Ant-Man, if you watch the movie or if you follow the comic, part of the reason he's so such a strong hero is because he can change his size at any given time. You can't change your size to this little speck on the screen and then have to deal with that. I think that's kind of insane.
You can for ultra moves though, right?
Yeah, I guess, but so Ant-Man wasn't Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, but he only showed up when Hawkeye used him as his like level 3 super. He'd shoot Ant-Man off the tip of his arrow, and then Ant-Man would turn into like a giant and then smash someone. So I don't know how Ant-Man would work, because like fighting Rocket Raccoon in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was already like super annoying because he's super short, so his hitbox is like really small.
Yeah.
And so like a lot of moves that normally hit people don't hit them. So I don't know how Ant-Man will work so much. Groot, I would imagine, is just one of their, kind of, he'll probably be bigger, he'll be taller, a little slower.
Character.
Yeah, he'll be like slower, but he's gonna have like reach, and he'll probably do like big damage, and he probably can take damage. And I guess you can kind of think of some of the stuff he can do just in terms of like the movie, I guess, because Guardians of the Galaxy. And I don't know, I think it kind of makes sense though, because to have a Marvel vs. Capcom 4, because I feel like the longest time was, would Marvel be okay with it?
Yeah.
More so than Capcom wanting to do it, because I'm sure Capcom wants to do it, right? And I think for Marvel, it makes sense just because all these movies keep coming out. They're doing like one every year, or maybe more than one once a year, right? And because of that, they probably can capitalize on the fact that a lot of people are watching these movies, falling in love with these heroes, and want to play them in said game.
What has me worried about Marvel's success since UMC 3, whatever, that game, it felt like very much a Capcom fighting game, right? But like now Marvel has so much at stake with these characters and with this game. Like, how much control are they going to have over the visuals, over different things? Like, will this be a Capcom joint, or will this be a like collaboration in a way that I think people might not like?
Yeah, Marvel's got that. I forget how long their roadmap is for the MCU, and it just stretches like at least 10 years from now with all the different spin-offs and all the different heroes incorporated. Now that like Ant-Man's around, there's Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Was that officially announced? Yeah, that's coming like next year or something. And it does seem like they're kind of much more like the control freak than Capcom is, especially considering Capcom. I mistakenly said that Resident Evil 7 is the next game. We have Dead Rising 4.
Yeah, Dead Rising.
Right,
That's what I was going to say.
Frank West was a character in past games.
He was.
I'm sure he'll make a return, especially if he's in Dead Rising 4. But again, I can't think of any like new Capcom characters that might be coming along for the roster.
I want Moira from Revelations 2.
Yeah.
Or Barry.
Yeah, Barry Burton would be awesome.
Barry would be
He's
great.
a Resident Evil fan.
No, I
favorite.
don't want Moira. She would just awkwardly shout expletives for no good reason.
Characters from the Baker family from Resident Evil 7 just eat you for their ultimate.
I mean, I think that trying to find new Capcom characters would be hard outside of like maybe Street Fighter 5. Maybe you try to pull like a Rashid in there, or one of their newer characters that they didn't have previously in Street Fighter. But they can also just go back, right? Like there are some characters that got omitted in 3 that were in 2 that were pretty big, like Captain Commando.
Bring back Hayato, man.
Yeah, exactly. So there's plenty of characters. Jin, so, and they can even go farther back if they wanted to, like rival school stuff and whatnot,
God,
right?
I would love that.
Yeah, so like this could be their chance to like bring back some of those older franchises that they maybe can't just make a new rival schools, or Darkstalkers even. Like they've had multiple Darkstalker characters throughout these Marvel vs. Capcom games, and it'd be cool to see some of those people come back, like John Talbane or something. He would play fine, I think, in a Marvel vs. Capcom world. Dimitri would play fine because he's almost like the Ryu of that game, you know what I mean? So there's a lot that they can go with.
I wonder if Marvel can say to Capcom, no, we don't want that character fighting our characters. Like, I wonder if they can go that. Oh, I hate to speculate so negatively, but I just really want, I really want to know how this new Marvel is going to handle a collaboration in a field that they don't usually work in.
Yeah, I feel like I think, I don't know, maybe this is just me being really open about it, I guess. It's just like as long as they stay true to the Marvel characters, I feel like, then that's where I would expect, their kind of angst about it is like, okay, make sure Doctor Strange is Doctor Strange. Make sure, these characters are these characters. And we can just imagine that this world is like, your characters get to fight our characters, but you got to make sure that our characters are the way they're supposed to be. And you can have your characters,
Right. No, of course. I understand what you're saying. But like, isn't like, there was like a baby in like one of the Capcom fighting games. I can't remember what it is. But like, I think maybe it was just like it was a sidekick to another character. I could just imagine Marvel saying like, we really don't want this little puny guy beating up our superheroes, Who knows?
I have to imagine. I mean, like they were just some of the gameplay that we were just watching showed like the Nemesis from Resident Evil 3. They get like that's not the deepest cut, but they go pretty deep with some of these characters. I'm wondering, like I said, between Dead Rising 4, Resident Evil 7, I don't know, like it's tougher because it's an RPG, but I wonder if they'll pull from Monster Hunter now at all. If that would be a case, like a hunter or something, just like a generic kind of character like that. I have to wonder like what Capcom and Marvel will be doing, because Marvel, obviously, there's ones you can safely assume will be here, like Captain America, Thor. They'll be here, least of all because their movies have been doing really well. Iron Man will be around.
Yeah, he's been in a bunch of them. Also, I guess the other side question I have, not to get too off tangent, is that if this is something that's going to be at PSX, is this like a Sony exclusive thing again? And are any of those characters going to make it in?
I think it's going to be at PSX because there's a Capcom tournament.
Oh yeah, Capcom.
Street Fighter
it's the
5
finals for
tournament.
Capcom.
Right. Yeah, I think that's just a coincidence. I don't know.
Okay.
Well, yeah, because I
mean,
mean,
who
like
knows? Who knows?
PSX does announce like non-exclusive things, but like when you look back at the last fighting game, Street Fighter 5 was exclusive for how long? Like a year.
I think it's just exclusive, isn't
It's just
it?
exclusive.
It was
Yeah.
just
And
exclusive.
I think-
before, yeah, right. Yeah, I have no idea. I don't
I think
know.
that got announced at PSX too. I was talking to John Luke about it earlier, so they
2
announced
years
that
ago,
at
yeah.
PSX, and then
Yeah.
And they're wrapping
maybe,
up the finals this
you know?
year.
Yeah, but Capcom, man, they did not sell enough copies of the Street Fighter 5. Like, they think they need the biggest audience
It's
they
true.
can get their hands on. And I'm sure Marvel wants to hit the biggest audience as well.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty curious to see how that shakes out. I imagine the licensing issues for like combining something like this, not that it's their first rodeo, but it just must be a nightmare because both parties want creative say over it, despite the fact that Capcom's the one developing it.
There's all these shows, all these movies. Just expect those. Like, don't be shocked if you see like Black Panther, Daredevil,
Black Panther, I'd actually be
Black
super on board
Widow.
with.
You know, so
Cage would probably
Luke
roll
Cage,
around now,
you
yeah.
know? So like Punisher, like
See, when you name all these, and I'm thinking of these, like I liked the first season of Daredevil. I haven't watched Luke Cage yet. Like I wonder if like Jessica Jones will be in here or something.
But don't you want these
She
characters?
just drinks whiskey and punches people.
Don't you want these characters to look like the comic book version of their characters? Like, if you saw the Punisher that we know from like modern media, I
Tom
would
Jane.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even follow it that often, but I would feel a little bit betrayed to not see the Punisher that I knew growing up.
yeah. But I mean, it'd be probably more that than the TV show, I guess. I hope so.
But who knows,
You're
If it doesn't
right.
resemble the movie or the TV show,
Yeah.
what's Marvel doing, really?
Yeah.
Like, they're disgracing their current effort.
Well, that's the thing. I would imagine like Iron Fist is going to show up because his show's coming out soon. I'm worried because when Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was released, this MCU like roadmap was not in place. There were a few movies. I think Iron Man had been out by then. The first Thor, maybe. I can't remember which movies were out, but now I think there's 2 a year, 2 Marvel movies a year.
Seems like
spring,
that, yeah.
fall, and now again, how much is this just going to be
Well,
marketing push for Marvel's efforts?
Some of those characters technically, like even Iron Fist was already in 3.
Yeah.
And Thor was in 3. Iron Man was in 3. But Iron Man's been in a lot of them, like since the like way beginning. So like that's not too weird.
You did say
know?
Deadpool can't be included. He's not.
Yeah, he's
Marvel?
Fox. I'm pretty sure.
All right. Well, wasn't Spider-Man Sony for a while?
But now I
he
think
was in
Marvel
Avengers.
has it back because he was in
that.
Marvel got Spider-Man back. Spider-Man's like too big, you know?
Yeah.
So on that note, I'd love to see Carnage. He hasn't made any of the games, any of these fighting games. Only Venom
would be great.
has. So
Like Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye is useless for most of the game. No, just kidding.
yeah, Hawkeye was pretty good in 3.
Stay out of our games,
Just saying, man.
All right. Well, unless there's any other points, I think we've exhausted the Capcom Marvel discussion. But yeah, so we will see this weekend. We have a couple people, Jake Decker, Randy, and some people are going down to PSX. Doesn't matter who. They're going down to PSX, which is in Anaheim this year, as opposed to San Francisco like it was last year. But we will have more news out of there. Like likely, we will see Marvel vs. Capcom 4, and we'll have more to talk about once we see that announcement. So leave your thoughts in the comments below. What kind of characters do you want to see? Which do you think won't appear? And what are your overall thoughts about potential for Marvel vs. Capcom 4? All right, Eric, I'm going to boot you off in a second.
All right.
You've been playing lately. There's a lot of games out.
Me? I haven't really. I was playing Overcooked with my girlfriend. That was fun.
Game's
Like
fun.
it worked out. And I'm debating Final Fantasy 15. I don't know if I want to, pour the hours into it. But I was just watching someone play a dungeon, and I was like, oh, that looks like fun.
Dungeons are freaking rad.
Yeah.
They're dark, they're spooky, difficult.
All right,
Yeah.
save Final Fantasy 15. Sorry, Eric. I'm going to boot you off
Get
for
outta
Rob
here.
Handler.
Final Fantasy 15.
Bring in Robert. He's falling asleep on the coffee table over there.
Roboito.
Get his entrance going on.
How are you?
In case you didn't hear. That's Rob Handlery.
Hi. Hello.
The people listening to this are very confused right now. Why is he not talking? Why is he screaming? I don't know what he's going for.
Oh,
Brought you on for a few segments. You have been playing a few games lately. First, before we get into the No Man's Sky update, which will be our next segment, I want to talk about the best open world games this year. Because when I first thought of this segment, or like a few of us were brainstorming, we thought there were more than there actually were. I feel like there's always at least like 10 open world games every year, but there actually weren't a ton this year. And I think like between Watch Dogs 2 releasing very recently and Final Fantasy 15 just releasing today. It's kind of a good time to touch on it. I want to talk about our favorites. What do we think the best was? I think we all kind of picked one out to mainly talk about, but I'll touch on all of them. Pete Brown.
Yeah.
Which one are you thinking of?
The best.
I mean, sorry, just to clarify, I mean in like a traditional sandbox open world as opposed to like Dark Souls 3, which you have to like fast travel at certain points and there's like certain gates that you can't get through for a while and it's very segmented. I'm talking like sandbox games. Like,
yeah, it's very difficult for me to choose. For me, it comes down to No Man's Sky, Watch Dogs 2, or Final Fantasy 15. All for very different reasons, which is why it's so hard to say the best. I will say my favorite right now, having played Watch Dogs 2 and Final Fantasy 15 recently, between those two is Final Fantasy 15. Both games offer a lot of discovery. Like if you spend your time really digging around, you'll find things that are really surprising and entertaining in some cases. But really, for me, I think it's 15. Just because of the scale of progression. Like I'm 65 hours in and I can still see another 10 or 15 hours worth of things that I want to find and explore. And unlike something like No Man's Sky, I know what I'm working towards in 15. I love No Man's Sky for its spectacle and a few other reasons, but at the end of the day, after I met Atlas, I was kind of like, well, I've got better things to do with my time.
We will get into Final Fantasy 15 way more later in this show today. But I do think it's interesting because I make it known that I've never played a Final Fantasy game before, and I just bought this last night. I'm going to be playing tonight. It's weird that the allure of a Final Fantasy is that it's a pure open world now, as opposed to like the characters and the storyline, which you said were serviceable. And again, not to critique this too much until we get into the Ask the Reviewer section later, but it is odd that I'm getting into a Final Fantasy because of its gorgeous, sprawling, pure open world sandbox.
Yeah. I mean, but that's, that is sort of the flavor of the month, right? Or the generation, as it were. I mean, we saw Metal Gear Solid go open world. Final Fantasy is following. And, a lot of games are sort of shifting how they handle their traditions and putting it in a modern package. So I think I can relate to how that is interesting. Even as a Final Fantasy fan, that has me stoked. So I can see for someone who has never played the series before how that would tip them over into buying the game, I guess.
Yeah, just seeing it from a distance, it looks gorgeous, which isn't always like the biggest selling point, obviously, but it does seem like there's enough to like keep you pulling you from region to region. And these like late game dungeons and missions and like bosses and legendary weapons sound like they'd be worth exploring for.
Of the three that you mentioned, Peter, do you think if you were to pick one to be the most repetitive, because that's like one of my biggest burnouts, is like, I've been kind of doing this.
It's No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Watch Dogs 2 is set in a city, San Francisco, that has a lot of natural variety, and that game represents it very well. You have a lot of different activities that you can involve yourself in. And 15 is kind of the same way. Really, combat and discovery are the two main things. But yeah, for No Man's Sky, it was so repetitive to have to constantly, grind for resources and ultimately to take the next step time and time again and just repeat that cycle and keep it going. Like that was super repetitive for me.
Yeah, that was me last night till very, very late. Yeah. Just like, wait. And that I feel like that can get deceiving too with some like No Man's Sky, where you still have those cool like spectacle moments, like occasionally, like when you do find that cool planet or like that like enjoyable and like tasteful animal to look at, and that's some just like hideous freak of nature that you're just like, come on, like, just this thing.
Something straight out of like the early drawing boards of The Last Guardian that they thought you might be like wandering around that world with, as opposed to Trico now.
I think I showed you guys that one animal.
I know what you're talking about.
The one animal that I showed you guys that's like got these wings and it's this huge. Like, what is that? Like, come on.
I can't wait for the GIF of that.
No, that's just me. We got a preview monitor here, and it's just me. For me, I suppose Division was one of my picks, simply just for that tone and that aesthetic of that city was super, like, I would say original, right? Like, you think about like a GTA or like Watch Dogs, like there's such a lightheartedness where it's just, those moments of just like some crazy event happening. But this game, Division, was like, that's messed up. This one makes me think when I see someone, innocent civilian, just getting like beat the hell up. If I can't save them in time, they die. Like there's a guilt and there's just like it's scary. It's a scary game, and that was like very different for like of the lineup. I feel like for this.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it a few times in the lobby between like being like PTR servers and just the actually recent release, the survival mode now. I think I've said this a lot, but this is one game I only put 2 hours into back in March when it released, and I've been wanting to play it ever since because from what I played, it was the world that was drawing me in. And again, we've talked about this before. This is just deja vu, but now that survival mode's out, a lot of people are saying, again, this world makes more sense now as an open world because it's a very risk reward. Do I want to spend a lot of time here even though the blizzard's going to eventually freeze me to death if I don't get to a fuel drum? I need food. I need water. I'm not going to be able to aim and kill these harder enemies if I'm too thirsty. I need better gear. Do I want to venture off the beaten path even though I know this way is safe?
Yeah.
I keep saying it, but once I finish all the other games, like the current games, I want to get back to the Division. That was like one of mine. Like, I don't know that it's the best, and I don't know that it's my favorite because I've only put 2 hours into it, but it's the most alluring to me in terms of its aesthetic and its overall world design.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know when you could date it back for open world games, but for me, I remember Fallout 4 having that impact with like the survival mode. Like the game felt natural and at its core, and I think Far Cry Primal did that. I never got into that version, but Division seems like a perfect place to have that. Like why else is there? I guess you have perks associated with like water bottles and soda cans and Division, but it's nice. It's nice to like know that like that's actually something that you are looking for like heavily. They're not just like goodies to sprinkle in.
Yeah, you did just talk about Far Cry Primal, and that's actually one that I'm not surprised we haven't talked about a lot. It's just like it's the Far Cry 3, Far Cry 4, 2 to some extent formula implanted on the Stone Age, but when I reviewed it and when I played it, I actually really liked that game. I was really impressed that Ubisoft didn't kind of eventually just give you like this machine gun rock thrower or this like this electric spear or anything. It stayed pretty grounded aside from like the mystical elements, but it stayed grounded in this world. And you just mentioned that they released that update afterward that added the like a survival mode. I did play a little bit of it, and I again, like you said with the Fallout 4 and even with the Division, I think that's the way to play this game. When like in the base game, when night fell and when like the sun went down, that's when a lot of the predators would come out. Fires were good for warding off like wolves and whatnot. But now apparently, there's cold to maintain, which is in the first game or the base game as well. But it just became way more dangerous in survival mode, which is what I liked about the base game. Did you guys even play a lot of Far Cry Primal? Rob, I think you did a little bit.
I played a good amount. And, just like many games, I think, can fall victim to that. You just get too overpowered. And I think survival works so well for open world is giving you that strong incentive to make that weapon, to go to be on the cusp of dying, and I think Far Cry is a perfect example of like making a spear. Like that's like, bow and arrow is the first thing you make. Like that's pretty much survival. Like it fits well there. And, I just realized even No Man's Sky did that with this new update. I haven't tried it yet though, but yeah, it's just interesting. It's just like making incentive and making you feel uncomfortable, I think, is something appealing. And, then to look back 50 hours in, like, dang, I got out of that rut. Like, I don't know, it's more empowering.
Yeah, it is weird because, again, I think the game was pretty forgettable against that Far Cry formula that we've kind of come to know and maybe get sick of. But looking back, it is actually one of my favorite open world experiences this year, although I haven't played Final Fantasy yet. But to continue talking about Ubisoft, which now that I say it out loud, they had most of the games on this list are Ubisoft titles.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, they have different studios all over the world. But Watch Dogs 2, we kind of touched on. Living here in San Francisco, I think, was the main allure of that game before it came out. I did not like the first Watch Dogs. Some of the problems I had with the first Watch Dogs carried over to this one. I played about 4 or 5 hours of Watch Dogs 2. Pete, you reviewed it, but I still felt like it was kind of lifeless. I know it's tough to have enough people in a city in a game to make it feel like it's really vibrant and kind of just like pulsating like I want it to. And I was exploring San Francisco just to see some of the sites, the tourist attractions, see if you could find like our office or my neighborhood, neither of which were in the game. But you reviewed it. What do you think about the world itself as it functions, like as an open world game?
You're 100% correct. Like lifeless is an adjective that applies, I think, to a degree, right? Like there are not that many people on the street. There is not that many cars on the road. There's enough to kind of give you those variables to at least consider. But yeah, it doesn't feel like San Francisco in that respect. But the open world, I think, benefited from, again, what I was saying earlier, like the variety that exists within it, the visual variety, the terrain variety, and the terrain being urban and natural. I thought there was a very, very good mix of those two. So in terms of the open world being alive, I don't know that was necessarily the case, but I felt alive in that open world.
Oh shit! Yeah, there's some profundity. I like that a lot. Yeah, I don't know. Rob, you live in San Francisco too. Did you? Richard Lee, our cameraman, is trying not to laugh at that sick comment.
No,
right
I
now.
should be fired for that.
I'm gonna buy that game now.
Did you play a lot of Watch Dogs too, Rob?
I didn't. I haven't played any.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's just. I think this time around, this year, as they say, has been just an influx of really awesome shooters.
Yeah.
It's kind of been where my mind, I think, has been at for I feel like I've just been burnt out and exhausted over the last few years of open world games, where it's like just even when it came out, like I was playing DayZ the first year I ever started GameSpot, and like those those games I can't do anymore because they just kill me. Like, oh man, it's 4 a.m. and I haven't seen shit. Like I mean that's your extreme game, but like I'm a little afraid to play Watch Dogs 2 just because I'm afraid of the moment where like I see that really funny. I keep hearing about this gameplay moment where you're walking around and it's like someone freaking out and beating up a car.
Yeah.
But I've heard that from many people, so I'm wondering when is that going to be the third time or fourth time that I've just kind of experienced that. I had to say, you compare that to like the 5 years for GTA, like that shows. Like I still tune into that game once in a while, and I'm like, oh, I don't think I've ever heard that.
Yeah,
and that is where it's just like, I don't know, it's super hard to top that type of world.
I will say the one thing that Watch Dogs 2 offers is a very easy way to get strangers either near or far to like share a piece of themselves with you, by stealing that piece from them, right? By reading their text messages or listening in on their phone calls.
Yeah.
And there are some funny anecdotes in there. Like it's not to the same caliber of what you get in GTA because it's not an organic experience. It is something you have to like trigger, right? And again, it is just something very quick and then it's gone. But I will say that in its defense, there is a lot of character buried within that world. You have to go just a little bit farther to get to it.
And that's where the first one fell short, right? Like you had those text messages or like those bios, right? But they were like 3 words or like 4 words. Like who cares? Like what is that of value? But yeah, when I hear that, that's pretty cool. Like
we
any
haven't
kind
been
of story.
Sorry, we haven't been on any crazy dumb tangents yet today. So here's mine. Have you seen the movie Bedazzled? Way back in the day.
Is it a documentary about adding gemstones?
No.
Denim?
It's
Brendan
Fraser and Jennifer.
It's my 5th favorite movie of all
Elizabeth
time.
Hurley. Is it really your 5th favorite movie of all time?
It's
All
number
right.
1, of
Again,
course.
this is useless and almost a non sequitur. But at the beginning of that movie, I forget how it fits into the themes of the movie, but they do that. They show this like bio of someone hovering above them. I don't even know how it fits into the rest of the movie now that I think out loud. But when I first played the first Watch Dogs, I thought of Brendan Fraser and Elizabeth Hurley and Bedazzled. Anyway, the last one I wanted to talk about was DLC. Witcher 3, Blood and Wine.
Oh, for sure.
We'll bring it up because it's an entirely new area that you explore. It's a new region. It's kind of like this French, Toussaint. It's like French dialect kind of spoken there. You put some time into this.
Oh, and I was on a roll.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, she's talking. Oh, Mary threw Bedazzled up.
Bedazzled.
On screen. So
Yeah.
here we go.
Oh, gee. Yeah, let's vamp.
Oh, there's.
Go ahead, Mike.
Even in
Oh,
San
shit.
Francisco.
So Watch Dogs 2 and a lot of segues. This is crazy.
Environmental.
Ubisoft, you're ripping off Bedazzled. No, I'm just kidding. Here's for those listening. Mary just threw up the intro that I was
double
talking
dips.
about. Yeah, this one guy double dips. This
You're
person's
right,
like hippie.
that is Watch
yuppie. A lot of Watch Dogs 2 by there he is. Brendan Fraser's lovesick.
Ex-dog owner.
Walking down Market Street. He's desperate, oblivious, eager to please.
This is blowing
This
my
makes
mind.
no
This is-
Holy shit. I kind of, when I first started talking about it, I was like, this is the worst tangent ever. But now I actually, it seems like I had a plan the whole time.
I think you just unearthed the secret to Watch Dogs. Brendan Fraser this whole time.
They didn't have the guts to just completely rip it off, so they've set the first one in Chicago. They're like, we'll get to San Francisco in the sequel. Anyway.
Doormat
He's a doormat.
All right.
bites his toenails.
So Toussaint in The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine is an entirely new open world segment. It's this French speaking kind of more stable environment than the base game. The base game's world was kind of in the middle of a civil war. Rob, Blood and Wine. Did you play much of it? Yeah.
I really liked it a lot, and I was like on a roll playing that game. And then we go through a lot of games here, so you have to like put things down. But yeah, and that felt like Witcher 3.5. It just felt like a whole. I think it was probably like the best DLC. I mean, it's one of my favorites. It was like one of the best DLCs I think of the year, just because like there was just so much going on, and that is a living, breathing world for the most part. Just for the amount of quests and characters you are constantly meeting, it's a game where like you can't do it all, and that says a lot. I mean, I think you could say the same for like Fallout as well, but just like the change of tone and heart for Witcher. You had a civil war with like just not genocide, but like tons of casualties in a war, like in the mud, like just dead. And here's this really like chirpy French town, like sunsets and just gorgeous like locales. Like it was a cool way to close out that game.
And CD Projekt Red is, as they've proven time and time again, are really good at telling these open world stories, that these things you just stumble upon, but also these things that tie different regions of the open world together and kind of give you a reason to explore beyond just like new weapons or gear, just actually uncovering these really well-written tangential stories. I didn't get to play much Blood and Wine this year, unfortunately. I played Hearts of Stone last year, which was a really good expansion, but that was more linear. You're going to places within the original base game's world, and now that Blood and Wine is out, I think The Witcher 3 is even more of a high bar for open world games.
And I had a cool time with Hearts of Stone because I actually didn't get a chance to play it when it came out. So what you could do is actually play them both at the same time. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever done this with DLC before. I guess, I can't remember if I have. But anyways, going back and forth between worlds. Like, in Hearthstone, spoiler, you get like a scar from a guy on your face, and he's like, I won't remove it until you do something. So I'm going around like Tucson with a scar on my face. Like, I don't think people react to it, but like, it was just kind of interesting to be like, man, I should probably get the scar off my face. Like, just multitasking. I don't know. It just felt cool to like go back and forth between like, as you said, like really awesome well-rounded stories. It was just fun to like have that freedom.
I don't even remember how you get that scar removed. There's like a laser surgeon in the swamp or something.
What's that? The Man of Glass?
It was a joke, but I forget how you get the scar off your face. Sure. Yeah, that dude, Gontar O'Dim, the guy they
who's
introduced.
A hell of a villain.
Did he come back in Blood and Wine, or is that a spoiler? Or do you even know? There was this really cool like arch character that they introduced in Hearts of Stone that I thought they were laying the groundwork for later stories. I don't know. If anybody in the chat knows, if you played Blood and Wine, let me know if Gontar O'Dim is back. But anyway, those were the major open world games, like most of which were Ubisoft titles, and some of which may have ripped off a '90s movie or two.
Agreed.
Yeah. So now that I have Final Fantasy 15, I'm gonna try to get into that tonight, and I will have played most of these games this year. But anyway, let us know if we missed any that you want us to mention. Let us know what your favorites are and what next movie Ubisoft should rip off. All right, Rob, I'm about to kick you off, but what are you playing tonight? You still doing No Man's Sky?
Or we're not?
Well, I'm not kicking you off. No. Sorry, we're still talking about one that we just touched on. Actually, I want to talk about No Man's Sky.
Cool.
The huge update. Sorry, I don't know why I almost did that. It's okay. Get so sick of you on the set. I'm kidding. Right. Yeah. So No Man's Sky major update just released a couple days ago.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you were playing quite a lot of it yesterday and last night. Tell us about it. What are the major features that it does? And overall, I kind of want to know if it makes the game better than it was at release.
I'll have to like get to that later because I have a hard time kind of coming to that conclusion. Like, I definitely think it is it is what it is. Like, it's a cool name because it definitely like laid some groundwork and it made it easier for me to actually see, if they, and I hope they continue to like improve this game. You can kind of see where they're going. But essentially, it starts off, and I think it caters to how a lot of people got frustrated with the game. Was like, it just feels like, we talked about open world like games where it's just getting repetitive, and I'm not seeing enough diversity in these planets that's worthwhile. So you have 3 different game modes, right? You have your normal one, so your save is unaffected. And then you have creative, I'll get to that, and then like survival. So it's like kind of like almost like as far as like time length goes, like long play, short play, and like, normal mode. But you get base building, which is where the game was lacking. Was, I feel, direction in some form where it was like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing at some point. You know, you get to a point, you kind of hit Atlas if you chose that path, and then it's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be making. There were times on a planet where it's like, what was I doing? I forget. And it's hard to pull up, you know, just that waypoint. Yeah. And so the game basically lets you create your own base. You then bring in a specialist. So the game implements more NPC aliens on space stations. So I go up, I grab one of these guys, and I say, work for me in my base. And then he starts basically giving me almost like side quests that are directing me towards, which is I think the heart of the game, or lack thereof, is just basically technology and like a Minecraft game. You're just building and crafting. So he's just giving me those, and he's saying, you need a weapon specialist. So now I'm building basically a little society in my own base, as well as that first guy is still also giving me new materials to use. So now I can, opposed to like the prefab circular buildings, I can now kind of go out and do whatever I want with blocks, and I can make towers, and I can do all these things. So that's pretty cool. I think that's very Minecraft, and almost reminds me of like Factorio in a good way, where like it gives more drive to be effective and be efficient, and it's more clearly laid out.
It almost reminds me of Fallout 4 as well. Like I didn't use the base building in Fallout 4 as much, and they introduced it in Skyrim too with forget what the DLC was called. You could build a house. I feel like it's meant to root people more in this universe, because after a while, you know, like with infinite planets, how do you get attached to any one?
Right.
You build a base on it, right? Like a home to return to. Did you feel that now? Like, do you actually kind of like going back here and stuff? Is this like the new drive for you to play this game?
Yeah, I think I'll play some more of it, because I haven't really come to, I would say, I'm afraid of coming to that burnout phase, but I see longevity because, you know, I mentioned the base building. You can then get a freighter, and these actually I think are the coolest.
Right,
they're like the coolest part of the game that like gives me that spectacle back, or adds spectacle to this game, where eventually you amount to like, you know, I think the cheapest one is like $7 million that I saw for like a freighter. I can then land my smaller craft on the freighter and offload supplies, and essentially the idea being like, okay, this is, instead of me, if I'm doing trade routes, I'm trying to like, you know, get into the marketplace in a different solar system, I can make a base there and come back to that, go to a different solar system, you know, get a commodity, just offload tons of stuff onto my freighter, which you can also customize to a degree like your base, put storage units in there. I can get, there's also, like, I'll get to it later, but yeah, you basically can just offload more and more items onto these freighters, and then just overhaul tons and tons of stuff. And that's neat, and it's a cool spectacle to just like be on any planet, any place, and just hit this hologram of like, where do you want your freighter to go? And it just warps in, and you can like just go up to it and just like, I don't know, diving down off of it into a planet, like gave me these vibes of like Aliens when they like first do that drop, or like even Call of Duty, like, because that's my favorite part of the game, I think, for sure, is entering a planet is just like,
it's dramatic.
It's so
beautiful,
dramatic.
yeah.
And even leaving, it like hits the synth music, you know, like, it brings back that, and I that was what I first really liked about the game. But one more side note of like another really big one is like more quality of life stuff. So you have like you're not looking at a menu nearly as often, which is like, oh man, my launch pads need plutonium. All right, great, I got to go in this menu. You can do that real quickly with this new kind of hot menu thing, where it's just like bam, 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 you just throw it in. And the other thing is, which is really big, is say I land on a planet and I can't find shit because it's just barren. They give you basically like the ability to throw down a device that will save the game, another one that will basically beam out and search for those quests. You know, may they be find abundance of resource or a colonial outpost or etc. So it's just quality of life raised. Like, you just can find things easier.
To go back to the bases quick, you might have said this, so correct me, but can you just build these anywhere you want on any planet?
So that's why you have this device. Perfect timing here is you set this up, and then one of the options is find me a habitable base.
Okay.
And then that's where I can basically go in, and it's like, do you want to set up camp here and make this your home world?
Okay.
And I have that option. and then that links to any kind of space station. So I could go as far as I want, like in the solar system or galaxy, and then always be able to come back to that base.
But once you establish that base, it stays there. You can't have more
Right.
than one of those bases unless you're in a different playthrough.
I think,
Or is that even made clear yet?
I don't know. I haven't been able to do multiple bases, but freighters, you can only have one.
Okay.
Just like I think it's very similar to your spaceship. I think you just kind of wipe whatever you had before. However, everything you had as far as items will be transferred over, so you're not really like at loss other than like whatever time you spend into the structure.
Okay. So overall, I mean, you played No Man's Sky when it released. Pete, you played a lot too. You reviewed it. But Rob,
that's right.
but Rob, do you think this improves? It sounds like this improves the game overall. Is it worth returning to now? Like, I guess that's like pretty subjective question, but does this make you personally want to return to it a lot more? Are you going to be playing a lot tonight or no?
Personally, it does make me want to play some more of it. But I think it's not quite there yet. I'd like to see more things, like having thought about the freighter. Like, the freighter's so cool. It's like, I think it's a really cool idea. Yet, you get attacked by space pirates. I'm like, oh, cool. Maybe I can send in this freighter, which I know has guns on it, and I warp him in, and he doesn't do anything. Like, it'd be cool to have that fleet, or like build up in that respect like a fleet, because when you first pick the freighter, he is in like a whole group of like other ships. It would be really cool, to basically have these huge like war space battles, right? Like just like bombarding other ships, like huge conflicts in space. There's not enough of that. I think that could be like what would drive me in, and it would make me want to like upgrade my ship or a crew or whatever it is. I don't know.
I do feel like that's the next step.
I think they can do it. Yeah.
Josh Shaw in the Twitch chat was saying, shouldn't this be focused on building ships? I wonder if that is like a step down the road. I know they touched
I think
on it.
I think they hinted at that, or someone found, I think, some file in the actual game of that, I believe.
Well, that would make sense. I mean, having these bases that you can build on a planet kind of roots you in one and makes you like care about that planet more. Whereas building a new ship, you could take that wherever you go, and that like seems to be the draw of this game: the spectacle of discovering new star systems, new galaxies, new planets, and whatnot. I feel like I'd rather build a ship that I can take with me. I mean, like obviously the freighters you can, but like in terms of the one I'm flying, I would like to try out. Pete, do you see yourself? You like this game? You enjoyed it? You think you gave it a 7?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see yourself returning to this at all?
No.
Just you've had it, your fill of No Man's Sky.
No, so all these things that you're describing, like they sound great, and like they sound like things that I would love to have had access to when the game came out, right?
Totally, that's how I feel.
When I was first playing, my mentality was follow Atlas, because I found that path to be fulfilling from like a narrative perspective, right? Like the things I was working towards a conclusion of my own story. Well, if my story that I'm making now is just to build things for myself to marvel at, that's too shallow for me. Just because I don't get a lot out of, I think, just base building just for the sake of it, right? Like even in Fallout 4, even though you had people like NPCs that were walking around that would change as you did that, I didn't really get what the ultimate goal was. Like, how was I rewarded? Was it just the creativity behind it? It kind of seemed to be the case, and that may be true here as well. I need some greater purpose for all of this stuff. I need to feel like what I'm doing has meaning beyond just I can do this now and look what I made.
Yeah, you can introduce as many features as you want, but at one point are they still cohesive with like the overall meaning of the game?
Yeah, and like, what are the challenges involved with building, right? Like, sure, there are time and endurance-based challenges where you need to get enough resources to do the thing, but are there intellectual challenges therein? Like, do things become more difficult to build or manage, or are you literally just scaling up and making things bigger because you have more of the stuff that you need to do that? If that's all it is, then yeah, I don't have it in me to go back. I still cherish the first, 60, 70 hours I spent with that game. But beyond that, I think I don't know that this update will bring me in again.
Sure. Yeah.
I would just tap on that. Like, yeah, I totally agree. And like, I'm still kind of in that spectacle phase of just like, this is still pretty cool looking. I'm like getting these huge freighters, space battles. Like, I wish I could see more of. But yeah, at the end of the day, I this is how the first play I had with that game ended. And like even last night, playing till I was like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. I'm like, wait, what am I doing actually right now?
Right.
And then when that hit me, I was like, I've seen this. And so, you know what it always is, though? It's when I see, like, the goddamn same freaking plant. When I see that plant, I've seen him. I've seen him on every planet. When I see him, I'm out. That's it. You
Look for the
liar.
next dumb animal. No,
How
there's
is
some
this
cool
plant
animals.
on every planet? Get out of here, plant, you know?
We found
Sorry,
the thing
I
that
have
set
no
him off.
sleep in me.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, you've been playing too much No Man's Sky, but you're gonna play a little
Go
more.
play somewhere.
Yeah. Anyway, so that is No Man's Sky. Newest update is live now on all platforms. You can play that. PS4, PC.
It's all the way live.
Yeah. Cool. So let us know if you plan on returning No Man's Sky now that this update is out. All right, Rob. Thanks for coming on. I'm actually kicking you off this time.
Cool. Thanks for having me, everyone. Have a great day.
See ya.
Bye.
I don't know where the sarcasm came from. I can't get anything genuine. We're gonna bring Jake Deckard on right now. I just called you Jake Deckard. Jake Decker.
That's my
bring you
name.
on. You've been playing a lot of Final Fantasy 15, Jake.
Yeah, not as much as Peter, but I've been playing a lot of it.
Pete, you reviewed it. It's finally time for the segment that I'm sure a lot of people were waiting for. Ask the reviewer. We want to get into your review of the game, 10 years in the making.
My review was 10 years in the making, yes.
Your review, you just submitted draft after draft for the past 10 years.
They,
and none
they
of them were
gave him a review
satisfactory.
copy 10 years ago. So,
Super advanced copy.
Yeah.
All right, Pete, let's dive into it. You gave it an 8 out of 10. You like this game a lot. Tell me about it. What's good about it?
What's good about it? Well, let me start with what I think was disappointing so I can actually set up what is really good about it, because I think that's important to understand. As I said in the beginning of my review, a lot of Final Fantasy games are remembered fondly for their story and their characters. I did not find anything in this game that struck me as memorable or original or that's surprising. Like, I feel like I've seen these stereotypes before, like the main cast that you're rolling around with. I've seen villains like we've seen in the past, and even some of the events in the game seem somewhat derivative of our favorite Final Fantasy games, and that to me is kind of disappointing. Like, there is sort of the spectacle of the story missions and certain boss battles that are these huge bombastic scenes that really just showcase what made modern Final Fantasy games special for, I think, a mainstream audience. Just if I can generalize that way, and that stuff is fun, but by the time you're done with the story, I was left thinking like, all right, I don't really know that I even care about what just happened, because what lay ahead of me was a world that I had felt like I had only just begun to tap into. Now, the story you can finish in as little as 10 to 12 hours. Japanese players are doing it that fast right now, like hitting level 35 and being done with the game. I spent a little more time to meet the recommended level caps, and it took me just about 30 hours, a little bit more. But since then, I have played 35 hours just exploring the world to finish side quests, but not just for the sake of finishing them, but to in effect grind so I can get to the high level stuff that I found just wandering around the world. Like, you find crazy difficult dungeons, you find huge monsters, and all you can think about is, man, someday I will be able to get to the bottom of that dungeon or defeat that monster and see what I get as a reward, or even see what I am capable of as a player in this world. And it's those pursuits long term that kept me going and keep me going. I have 2 major optional quest lines left that are promising to give me the best of everything that I want out of this world, which is equipment and crazy battles. And some of the dungeons, I was looking through a strategy guide today to solve a mystery that I hadn't been able to solve up until this point. Turns out the solution is somewhat easy, but the dungeons that I will be seeing are insane. The strategy guide said, we can't explain this to you in text and image format. We've prepared a video because this dungeon is so hard to interpret. And not just because it's a maze, but because dimensions, angles, all these things get toyed with.
You go into like the 5th dimension?
Yeah.
You just escape the bounds of time and space?
Anyway, I just think like this game has a lot of faults, and it's the cliched statement applies. It is more than a sum of its parts. Like, I can complain about a lot, but I can also gush twice as much about smaller details.
Yeah, we touched on it earlier in the show. We were talking about open world games this year, and I was saying, as someone who's never played a Final Fantasy game, but is gonna jump into it with 15 tonight, I never really think of the the open world aspects of these games, because this is like one of the first times it's been like just pure sandbox almost.
Sandbox, yeah. Like the way I define it is like, contemporary open world principles are what applied here. Because a lot of Final Fantasy games, apart from some gatekeeping, you do have access to a massive world and you can go out there and find towns, and some people will give you these tiny quests. But the way that this game handles it is much more similar to something you'd see from Ubisoft, right? Or, similar studio publishers games. Yeah.
Yeah, Jake, you've been playing a lot too, and you were saying like you've been taking it really slowly, exploring these regions and whatnot.
Yeah.
EOS, the continent. I believe
So
it's called.
I actually kind of had a question about the story, I guess. Do you think you may have liked it more though if you took it slower? Because I'm going slow and I'm finding out like there's a lot of like side conversations you have with characters. Like, do you think you might like the characters more if you were moving slower? Because I'm taking my time. And
so it's not that I didn't necessarily like the characters, but I don't think that they are remarkable in any sense.
okay,
Like Prompto, for example, is a very sort of like, uplifting personality to be around. Like, you win a difficult battle and like he sings like the classic Final Fantasy victory song. And that's like very charming. Like, I like that. But like I look at Ignis and I look at Gladio specifically. Ignis is, I'm British and I wear glasses, so I must be the smart one in the group. Like are we idiots? Are we supposed to look at that and say, man, that's a really clever take on a character I've never seen before? And now there are times where these characters get a moment in the spotlight to show a different side of themselves. But again, those don't feel like they warrant any like serious acclaim from me. So I think like there is some charm to gain by spending time with these characters, but by the end of the story, when you've seen everything that they have to say and they begin repeating themselves, and you've seen all the story moments that they're involved with, you're left wondering, wait a minute, they showed me this side of them that I didn't see before, and then it went away. Then they went back to the same person they were, and I got nothing new out of them. It just felt like a very fabricated, artificial moment.
yeah. Before I actually came in here, I had an interaction with Prompto. It was like at one of the hotels or whatever, and it was like a lot deeper than normal because normally, like you're saying, like we go into a battle and he's singing or he's like, oh, this is fun or whatever. But then right after that, it's back into battle and he's like chipper again, even though he just had this sort of deep conversation with Noctis.
Exactly. Yeah. It's surprising. I think when you look back, I feel like I'm reiterating so much in my review. I apologize for those who've read it. But if you look back at, like some of the best characters in the history of Final Fantasy games were your sidekicks, were the supporting cast, because they not only offered something very different from the main character, but very different from people we know in the real world, right? And I feel like so much of what we look at here are stereotypes we've seen in media and stereotypes that are based on like real world people in some sense, if that makes sense. That's a bit of a stretch, but
Well,
I don't know.
After reading your review and talking to you a lot about this, again, because this is going to be my first Final Fantasy, and I'm pretty excited to try it out, but you said like the first 30 hours or so, or like you said, some people are being like 15, but probably like 25, 30 hours is fun because you're going through the main story, you're seeing EOS, this continent. But you also said that like the late game content, these massive bosses, these dungeons, these legendary weapons, that's where you had the most fun, I believe, or where you had a lot of the fun. Like, can you talk about that late game stuff? Like, if we stick around for like 60, 70 hours like you did, what can we expect to see?
So one of the things you do in the story, it's an initiative, it's an effort that you start, is you have to go reclaim these weapons that belong to former kings, your forefathers, right? And you find 5 or 6 of them throughout the story. But if you keep just following it, you can finish the game with only that many, right? So that'll leave a whole bunch you need to find. Well, how do you get to them? Where are they in the world, right? So that not only requires a little bit of digging, but it requires you to, I think, take the time to do side quests, because you figure out early on that side quests, maybe the goal itself is kind of trite, but the place it takes you teases you. Like you'll come across, you'll go fight this little guy and you're like, wait, what's that thing just over the horizon? I've never seen that before, right? And it's not until you go into that side quest you see that really cool thing. So the late game stuff is a process of finishing the stuff you didn't do during the story and then realizing like, man, this world is more fascinating than I thought. And so these end game dungeons are, like most of the dungeons in the game, pitch black. The only thing that you can see is whatever is illuminated by your flashlight. Or maybe an enemy appears and the glowing behind their eyes would light up in the dark. And it's that sort of like feeling of this like daunting adventure. And as you improve and as you begin to beat these big things, that's when I kind of began to like my team a bit more, because it definitely felt at this point that like they were my we were fighting a battle together. I didn't care about their personalities so much as I valued what they brought into a fight.
Yeah.
And that's how I found value in them. And I thought that they each offered something very different. So it's both a personally gratifying thing to be able to beat this late game stuff, but also find a way to actually appreciate the characters that you're rolling with.
I do want to touch on the combat because you said that was a high point of the game, and it looks fun from everything I've been seeing.
Yes. What do you want to touch on about it?
Can you just, I don't know, what do you think about it for people who haven't read your review? Like, how does it work? Because it's all like real time, but you're still swapping between party members if you want to, right?
No, not at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So actually what you saw was you can use, what are they called? The special moves, I guess is what they are. And then it swaps that character and you watch them perform.
That's what I saw.
They're
So
sort
you're
of like
playing
limit
Noctis.
breaks. Like you have a meter that has 3 bars. As your teammates attack, and I think it even builds gradually over time, you can spend certain amounts of that meter to command your teammates to do something. That's the only control you have over them in battle. So and you can only control one of those abilities at a time. You can't have a character with multiple ones, right? So at any given fight, you have 3 possible commands to issue your teammates, but that's it. Otherwise, you're just controlling Noctis, and it is if you can choose to have not real-time combat, which I'll get to in a second, but for all intents and purposes, it's real-time combat. You hold down one button to just do a string of attacks, right? There's no real strategy behind when you attack, but you can phase out of phase from an enemy attack. So if they swing at you, if you're holding down square, it'll just pass right through you. That and the ability to throw your weapon and warp to where it is or warp attack an enemy from a distance, that all costs magic points. You have to manage Noctis's magic points because when he runs out, he's in a weakened state. So basically what you're doing this whole battle is attacking, defending at the right time, saving and regenerating magic points as often as possible. But a lot of the tougher battles, you have to use a lot of items. There aren't many curative spells in this game. Like there are no just plain curative spells. Everything is either fire-based, lightning-based, or ice-based, and you have to cast that element and then have a side effect, maybe. So you use items a lot. And to use items, you do stop combat. You press a button and it lets you go through a menu. On the other hand, there's also wait mode, which if you stop moving on the battlefield, the camera will stop, and you have lines between you and the various enemies on the field, and you can take your time and pick which one you want to target and do something. But that is just so arduous, and it totally removes like what is fun about combat. And actually, you kind of lose what is happening in the moment when you stop to do that.
Kind of sounds like it sacrifices the flow that the like real-time combat sounds like it has.
That's the way it felt for me, and I can see that they put it in there for people who maybe are having difficulties, but there's also an easy mode, which I didn't try, but from what I understand, it's basically you can't die because your teammates can sort of revive you. You have like 2 death states. One is temporary, one is permanent. And so I think your enemies or your allies just revive you at that point.
Yeah, you just mentioned easy mode. I did want to ask. I mean, it's an RPG, so the more you grind, the easier it's going to be. But what's like the difficulty of this game overall?
It's the story mode is pretty easy up until I'd say the second to last dungeon, if you can call it that, of the story mode, which has the level suggested level requirement jumps pretty high. It's pretty easy, but when you get into the end game stuff, very, very tough. I mean, I am expending. You find some really like crazy restorative items in the world, and I'm sitting there like, oh God, I got to use this thing. Like I've only got 2 of them after 60 hours, but my party's dying. I'm on my last breath. Like the enemy is so close to death. I'll use it. And so it does get very difficult towards the end. And grinding is a thing, but even then I'm fighting enemies. Like once you get above level 40, enemies at level 40 will still be challenging even at level 60. So yeah. It's a hard game. There's so much to talk about. I'm sorry. I'm like rambling through it.
It sounds huge, and like especially just seeing gameplay and everything of traveling across this world. I think we're doing a live stream tomorrow of just like a road trip across it or something. I have no idea, but it does sound like after 10 years it was worth the wait. You liked it quite a bit.
Yeah, worth the wait. I don't know that I'd say that.
Maybe 10 years is kind of a long time, but
I'll be honest. Now that it's here, all of that is history. Mm-hmm. I'm just looking at the game as it is today. I'm not really like. I was never emotionally invested in this game to begin with. I was always just curious, like, what is it going to be? So now I see what it is. And what it is a great game. One that I think doesn't necessarily live up to the series legacy in some ways, but it also reinvents it and does some new things that it's never done before.
Cool. I'm looking forward to playing it as my first Final Fantasy. But if you want to hear more about it, Pete's full review is up on GameSpot. He gave it an 8 out of 10, so go to GameSpot.com and check that out. Going to do one more segment on Final Fantasy 15
Okay.
before we end the show.
I'll let
Probably won't be
Jake
as
talk
long as
more.
that.
I'm sorry.
I think people want to hear you.
People, we were kind of like wondering what people want to know about the game in the long term. I mean, once you get past this late game content, these dungeons, these huge bosses, you maybe find all the legendary weapons. We're kind of wondering what people might want out of it, or like what we personally might want out of it in DLC down the stretch in 2017 or after, whenever they choose to keep supporting the game until. But Jake, I don't know. You've been playing, I think you said about like 12 hours now, around that?
Yeah, I think I'm around 12 hours now.
I mean, even like from what you've heard from Pete and like about the late game content, can you think of anything that you think this game should add, or maybe would just be like more of the same late game content we have now?
Well, I mean, after hearing what Peter was saying about those late game dungeons, and after like hearing what it said in the guide, I think late game dungeons would be cool really far down the road. However, I think right now it would be nice to have more customization options. I know the car, you can change colors, you can add decals, right? But I kind of don't like what any of my characters are wearing.
Leather boys?
Yeah, and I think you can like change some of them, but I think I also heard you say that you can't really buy new stuff in the game. So you're stuck with your leather zippered up.
You can't buy. There's a whole equipment menu for a tire, and you can't buy any.
Yeah, you start out with like 4 options for each, right? And
But
that's
there's 2 outfits that have the option to put on a jacket or not.
Yeah.
So it's just, let's be honest, it's just 2.
So are we assuming they are setting it up for DLC in the future like that, or like maybe microtransactions?
I hope so. Like, what the hell? What?
You're stuck with this dude showing off his 6-pack, like his unzipped leather the entire game.
Or you put him in like these like white chino pants and like I don't know, like,
Oh yeah.
like it's the options, they blow, they suck.
Like his family owns like a hotel in the Florida Keys.
Yeah, like I'm okay with Noctis, I'm okay with Prompto, I guess, but yeah, Gladio and Ignis, I just found myself like, ugh. And Justin brought up a good point. Justin Haywald was like, wait, you mean I can't wear classic Final Fantasy gear? Like I don't get to find these like rad outfits? And I was like, no, but that sounds awesome. Like I would love to dress Prompto up like Cloud. You know what I mean? Like perfect fit, you know?
Yeah.
There's so many of those instances. Noctis could be Squall if we really wanted to go there.
Don't the outfits even like change attributes slightly too?
They
so
do,
It seems
yeah.
kind of weird to only have 2 or 4.
You do at one point unlock another one, but
Sick, one more.
right? And I found myself more caught up in the fact that I hated the way my characters looked than, oh, I like the way that this benefits my stats. You know what I mean? I would pick something that made me weaker because I didn't have to stare at a dumb outfit.
I do that. I would too.
Yeah.
I do that all the time. Like
I'm very superficial.
Fallout, like Fallout's like these stats look better, but you look dumb with like a piece of metal sticking out of your chest. So we're gonna.
Hey, you can give him new earrings though, or this sick ski vest.
Yeah. Like he looks like a rich person trying to like fit in with commoners in that outfit. Like his clothes don't fit. He doesn't know how to wear a hat. Like
It's perfect for the desert too.
Yeah, he looks like he's not gonna be sweating at all.
No.
All right, so new equipment and just accessories, clothing in general would be good.
beyond that, weapons. Merchants sell 1 or 2 weapons. Like I think for any character, the most weapons I have is like 8 or 9.
Because you said like the late game, a lot of the cool parts of the late game is
Really?
coming across the legendary weapons that like your forefathers had.
Well, sort of. So those aren't traditionally weapons. Those are super powered, and when you use them, they drain your HP. So there's sort of like something you use when you're feeling very confident and you don't need to worry. But most of the time, when you're doing the high level stuff, you can't use them because it'll put you at a disadvantage. So you do use just standard weapons. But there is a quest line right now that I've opened where I'm seeking a different set of legendary weapons. And those are actual like real ones. So I'm hoping to get those, but it's just 1 per weapon type. I'm not finding like a suite of swords that look rad or offer a lot of different properties. There are some differences, but to go to a shop and just see 1 sword the entire game is bullshit. Like,
Yeah, because you like don't even really see the swords and stuff unless you're fighting. Like it almost seems like, why don't you just have more and like not like just, yeah.
Like it pisses me off. It's not enough that I think about it long term, but reflecting on it now, it's like, yeah, that is really dumb. That is really super bad. Like it doesn't hurt combat, but it hurts my ownership over my character.
Yeah, in open world games, especially RPGs of this magnitude, I kind of want to see my character look different at the end, or at least like play different with different weapons or something.
They do look different at the end.
Oh, but is it because of equipment or outfits?
No,
Are we in spoiler territory? Should I stop talking?
not really.
Oh, okay.
But
Did they become?
It hints at it
Did
at
they
the
become?
beginning.
It hints
right?
at it at
Yeah.
the beginning of the game.
Okay.
It's
Interesting.
like very obvious foreshadowing in like
Okay.
there's no question that it's foreshadowing something.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But in the sense that I would like to keep like building my character with new gear and whatnot throughout the game, which I don't. Is that like a Final Fantasy trope or no? Not like an open world Witcher.
Not in terms of changing appearance,
Okay.
but in terms of having a lot of options. Yes, that is if you want to call it a trope. I call it, tradition.
Okay.
Something else that might be kind of cool. Like, I actually haven't found any of the summons yet, and it seems like they're a pain in the ass to actually summon.
Doesn't sound like there's a lot, are there?
But it might be cool to have more. Maybe
There's 4.
there's 4. Yeah,
You
but
see more in the game, but you can only use 4. And if you're lucky, you will cast 2 of them. It's really they need to.
Yeah, you sounded pretty sour on the summons.
It was
this
one.
game.
It was one of the bad notes on the review. One of the things that definitely did stand out to me more than the lack of swords, which I didn't feel egregious enough for me to get that upset about in the big picture. But the summons, oh my god, the game makes such a big deal about them, and you can never freaking cast them. You have to be at a certain health state in battle and in a certain region. But that's bullshit. Even if you're in those states in that place, you can't cast those freaking summons. I knew the rules. It was told to me by the PR team. I spent an hour trying to summon Leviathan. Didn't happen.
Didn't you have to be near? Well,
I was
near
near.
water
Yes.
and doing what you're
You are correct.
And your health was really low.
I went to the ocean coast. I went on a lake. I went on a river, and Leviathan was somewhere else, just fucking off. I
You
have
to
no
sing
idea.
All I Want for Christmas, the Mariah Carey version.
Yeah, and so you get in these huge battles, not when you're just trying to summon them, right? But in the game, you get in these huge battles, and in past Final Fantasy games, it'd be like, you know what? I'm going to kick your ass with Ifrit right now. I'm going to cast a summon because that is the most powerful spell I have, and you can't stop me. But now summons will appear just because the magical conditions are met. But it could be in a battle where you don't need their help,
Right. I don't know. Is there anything else we want to talk about? It is release day of this game.
I'm adding on a
and
really
we're already
ending
talking
this
about
on
the
a really
DLC,
bad note.
but no. I mean, I imagine in a game like this, if they do when they do eventually release DLC, it'll be stuff that will reward people who've been playing for a while. I would assume maybe more dungeons for the people that did like 100% of this, like 80 hours or however long it might take, and like to reward them rather than people that are just getting in.
I'm curious too. Like, you had Final Fantasy 13-2, Final Fantasy 13-3, Final Fantasy 10-2. Like, do you think there'll be like DLC could be Final Fantasy 15-2?
I had that thought the other day. But so the thing is, the story doesn't leave a lot of room for anything like that. There is a little bit of room for it, but not in the sense that I can be like, oh yeah, I can see where this is going. I could not tell you where I think the story might continue.
Maybe with like different characters, or is that territory? Is that a different Final Fantasy? Because I don't know the tradition, but like, because I really do love the world. Like, I'm having so much fun just exploring the world. It'd be cool to see DLC. I mean, the world's already huge, but maybe after a while, like, have a new area, maybe not to the same size, but have a new area you can go to, maybe new characters you play as, or like a new sort of side story, kind of like you guys were talking about Blood and Wine earlier. Like,
actually, you know
like
what? That brings to mind. So Sid, right? He's a recurring character in a lot of Final Fantasy games. He's in this one, and he is an old friend of your father. Now, there's a point in the game where you see, like, it's not really a spoiler. You just see like a photograph of Sid and your father and 2 other guys like 30 years ago, right? It's like a mirror image of what you're currently doing in the game, but the generation before you. I could see DLC that uses those characters to tell the story back then. That's actually probably where I would expect they could go and still justify the DLC without having to jump through hoops. Like, how does this fit, right? Well, it fits because it took place before. Different characters, maybe same abilities or at least the same battle system.
Interesting. Yeah. All right, well, that's Final Fantasy 15 and the DLC we kind of want to see down the road, but yeah. Let us know what you guys think once you play more of it, what you think we could see in DLC down the road, where you think the story could go from here, what more additions to the open world you want to see. Let us know in the comments below. All right, that's the show. We didn't go half hour over talking about Titanfall 2 this week, unfortunately.
we still can, right?
Yeah, we could. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of games to be playing right now. Pete, you just got The Last Guardian finally last night. Gonna be playing that, reviewing that. Oh my god, that's creepy looking.
Sorry.
You just made a crazy face. For
2 games, 10-year long waits.
I know.
Like, outright. It's crazy.
Yeah,
like,
and you got them back to back.
Yeah.
Kind of a 1-2 punch of holy shit. I remember when this was released. I have been driving legally since like both these games have been like when Final Fantasy 15
I was in
started
middle school.
development. Yeah, I was same here. Or I was not like freshman in high school. Anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to playing my first Final Fantasy 15 tonight. P, you got Last Guardian. I'm assuming that's what you're gonna be playing. Jake, more Final Fantasy 15 as well.
I think more Final Fantasy 15, maybe a little bit Titanfall in there.
Cool.
Hitman 2. I actually really like Hitman.
I think we're all trying to wrap up like Game of the Year contenders and just make sure we played everything so we can.
Oh, Peter's looking.
Did you say Hitman?
He did say Hitman. Hitman. All right. Cut that off. Anyway, that's our show for the week. As always, thanks for joining us. Jean-Luc, Eric Tay, Mary Kish in the back, Richard Lee, cameraman. Always good to have you guys setting the show up. And everybody else, try to finish up as much games as you can, as many games as you can before we get into our Game of the Year videos in the coming weeks. But until then, have a good week.